Hi everybody, my name is Eric and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video I want to talk about all things magical mentoring. I've been struck on this topic because of a couple of reasons. The first is Sandra Inman from the Mystery Witch School. She spoke about this recently on her Facebook and her YouTube channel as well, I think. But also, I was listening to a podcast that I recently discovered called BS Free Witchcraft. And for the most part, I've been really enjoying it. I think the guy's name was Trey, who organizes the podcast, and he's an eclectic Wiccan from America. And I really have enjoyed what he had to say. His episode on the Satanic Panic was really interesting, because that doesn't seem to have been as much of a thing here in Australia as it was in the US. So, hearing his perspective from somebody who sort of, lived through that era was really cool and really informative, which is what I'm always into, as you guys will know. So I really enjoyed listening to that episode of the podcast. But as I was listening through all the episodes, I think I'm up to date now, but he has one episode where he talks about magical mentoring, and he essentially says that, if he met someone who said they were being trained by someone else, he would be skeptical of that person receiving training. And this really struck me because I've been through training with my first coven. It was a teaching coven. We did Eclectic Wicca. And we also had a few things that were sort of unique to our coven that we did, and sort of we're building up a little tradition of its own. So I did go through, my year and a day sort of training. But I'm also an alumni of Aaron Leach's Grimoire 101 course. But most of what I learn on the ground. I involve myself with other traditions and other practitioners, and I involve myself in those systems as well. So I tend to have my hand in a lot of different pots, which isn't always the best thing, but I really do like having a well-rounded understanding of different systems and what different people are doing and the different traditions and ways of being that are out there. And I do really value the training that I've received, especially through Doc Solomon's. That Grimoire 101 course really helped me to understand how to use the Key of Solomon or Solomonic magic on a day-to-day level as a low magic kind of thing, which completely transformed my relationship with Solomonic magic. Instead of being this strictly, highly ritualized, high church kind of thing, it became very much more like a layperson's approach, and I wouldn't have gotten that. I wouldn't have gotten that understanding of the cosmology and everything like that I have if it wasn't for my involvement in Aaron Leach's course. And I think, where I can totally agree with Trey is, if your training solely consists of learning from a single individual, I can see why that would be detrimental. Because, you can't expect one person to know everything that you're ever going to need to know. There's not one person who can teach you all of occultism. It's such a broad topic and such a broad thing that you really do have to do your own research and learn from multiple sources. But it also brings me to this. I go to workshops all the time. The Great Witchy Shop in the city, Eclectica, in Brisbane, they do a lot of teaching, a lot of classes, a lot of these sorts of things. I got to see not Rune Emerson, I wish. I got to see Gordon White at Eclectica earlier this year. Brody Ann, who actually works in both of the stores because they have sister stores. She does a lot of hoodoo classes and, works a lot of those African traditions and stuff like that. And so I really enjoy going to other people's workshops and seeing other perspectives. And when I was first learning with my initial teacher in this eclectic coven, we would quite often have coven field trips, and we would go to other people's rituals just to get an experience of what that's like and what other systems are doing. And, there might be little snippets from those things that we would bring into our own rituals and bring into our own traditions of what we were doing in our circle. And so, that sort of because my teacher was so adamant that, like, you will never learn everything you need to know from me, you need to go out there and learn other things, that teacher of mine is currently under at least one course of study at the moment, all this time later. So, like, we are always learning and always evolving, and even Sandra Inman from the Mystery Witch School is involved in a course of study herself at the moment. So, like, we should and are always learning new things. And I think, you know, to be skeptical of somebody for wanting to go out and actually learn something from someone else, I think that that's really detrimental. You know, there are a lot of things that you just can't teach yourself. Like, when I first started this stuff, it was me sitting in front of an altar. There was no movement in my rituals when I first started this stuff. When I was like 12, right? So this is a long time ago. But when I first started doing this stuff, it was just me sitting, visualizing, maybe a couple of candles and some incense, and like not much else going on. But like, it wasn't until I met this first teacher and started interacting with this training coven that I sort of realized, oh my goodness, you can actually stand up, you can like move around, you can have a huge circle where everybody's standing and we're all dancing and moving and like lots of things are going on and happening and people are hailing the quarters and all this sort of stuff, and like that just didn't exist in my mind. You would sit down, you would visualize the circle, you would say the words, and then you would light your candle, and like that's it really. So it was interesting for me at that age to actually get to experience something else and get to experience from someone else the teachings of witchcraft. Because up until that point, it was, it looked very different in my mind. And it's interesting over the last 10 years how my perspective of traditional Wicca, even though I've never been involved in that myself, my readings of, like, I started to work backwards, right? I started to read about Thelema, about the Golden Dawn, about the grimoires, and like constantly working my way back in through history and learning that material, you know, at a like understanding level. Not that I'm an expert in any of these systems, just that I can sort of have a passing conversation with somebody in them and still know what they're talking about. So like, you know, working my way back through those systems helped me to understand British traditional Wicca so much more, and like also my involvement in like Freemasonry and stuff like that as well. Really changed how I thought about that stuff. But it's all through training that I've gained these understandings. And I'm definitely one to be more likely to actually like go and do a course than try to like read the classics until my eyes bleed. Like, if I can have a good understanding of what it is that I'm reading before I go into those classic texts, I definitely want that advantage, instead of like starting from ground zero when there's so many amazing teachers out there. Like, I don't know much about astrology, just like enough to get by in classical grimoire sort of cosmology. But if I wanted to learn astrology more, I would definitely be doing a course with somebody like Dream Orpheus, which is Kim Fairminer. She's an amazing astrologist, and an amazing witch as well. And I would go to somebody like her and take a course from her if I wanted to learn more about astrology, because I know that she knows her shit. And like, as long as you're vetting your teachers, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have a teacher, especially if you're interested in a tradition. Like, some of these systems, like British traditional Wicca, is not something that you can teach yourself. It's something that has to be taught to you by another person who's had that experience. And so as long as you vet them and can confirm that they are legit and authentic and you're a good fit with them in terms of personality-wise, like, then that's perfect, you know, like, that's fine, I think. I don't think there's any reason to be skeptical of somebody who's going through that course of training just because they're doing it with somebody else, or learning from somebody else, you know. Because, like, it's through my conversations with traditional Wiccans and asking their perspective on things that I've been able to really grasp it. When I read through things like The Witch's Bible, or, you know, Vivienne Crowley's Wicca, or anything like that, I have a better understanding going into those classical texts because I've already had that conversational basis, or that real-world application of these techniques that I'm reading about. And so I think, yeah, like, we're always constantly learning and evolving, and we should be. And I think whether that's with a person or whether you're teaching yourself, like, I think both are pretty valid. But for me, there is definitely that advantage before reading classical texts of having that conversational understanding. So I think that's all that I really wanted to say on this topic at this point. If you guys have anything to add, or you have an aberration of classical training, or if you taught yourself, if you did get training from someone else, like, leave your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, because I think this is a conversation that could really have use of many voices, and many perspectives, you know, because like I say, you know, I think vetting your teachers is really important. If they claim to have a degree in something, ask them for their upline, ask them for their vouchers. Like, don't get yourself caught up in fraudulent claims, because there are plenty of those in these communities. But it's, with the internet now and with everything like that, you know, it takes 15 minutes to verify a teacher in a specific tradition. So, yeah, like, everyone knows everyone in these traditions, and you won't, yeah, it's a lot harder now, I would say, with the internet to actually get caught up in somebody who's dodgy, than it was once, because there's, you know, the British traditional Wicca groups and everything like that, where you can go and you can say, does anybody know this person? Can anybody give a vouch for this person? Public figures are your friends in that respect, I guess. You know, if the public figure knows them and can vouch for them, then they're probably good. But yeah, I guess that's all I really want to say. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, I hope this has been informative, or at the very least entertaining, and I hope that you're all well. So until I speak to you next time, mwah.